this video is a response to Larry Williams from Otaku Assemble on his video about parenting and censorship. Now, I do agree with the general idea that he brings up, that parents should be involved in their children's lives and take responsibility for their children, what happens with them. However, there are a few things that I just kind of disagree with him about, which is what prompted me to make this video. And the main thing I disagree with him about is this idea that parents should no longer kind of have lives after they have kids. And it's something that I very strongly disagree about, because while I understand that, yes, when you become a parent, you become responsible for your children and you gain that sense of responsibility for that new person, I think what is often ignored when it comes to parents is that they're also people, that they don't just stop becoming people because they have kids, and that we put parenthood on such a high pedestal that a lot of people become parents for the wrong reasons. And it's not to say that they don't love their children and do not see their children as something that they care about very strongly, but I think it's often ignored that on top of being a sacrifice, that having children is also sometimes a burden. And not a burden also in a negative way, but it is, you are responsible for this other human being. Financially, emotionally, when they get sick, when stuff goes bad, when stuff goes wrong, you're responsible for this person. And whenever anything goes wrong, people will blame the parent, sometimes most particularly the mother. And there is this sense of not really understanding that parents need to also be people. And I feel this way, and I have felt this way as I've been growing up, because of seeing how giving yourself completely into being a parent can have negative effects later on. Because specifically going with my own personal experience, my father sacrificed furthering his education, his profession, and other aspects of his social life to become a full-time father. He dedicated his life to being a father to me, my brother, and my elder sister. And he sacrificed his art, doing things with his friends, many things that he enjoyed doing. He made those sacrifices for in order to be there for us, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the house, everything that meant being a stay-at-home parent. And which is fine, and I do think is a good thing to have if you have the financial ability to afford that, which we don't necessarily have, but that's beyond the point. So he was very involved with our early education and taking care of us and nurturing us. But however, there came a point where my brother and I no longer needed that same level of nurturing and support and, dependence as we did when we were children. And what has happened since then is that there's this real disconnect, because my father still he does not have anything else besides us. Now, slowly he's been able to get out of that, and he has, through golf and talking with other parents, sometimes he does manage to have more social activities through older friends that he's maintained over the years still. But he has sacrificed a lot in order to be a full-time parent. And as a result of that, he sometimes suffers because his entire person has revolved for 20 years, and, well, if you to count my sister, 30 plus years, but specifically with me and my brother, because we were the ones who he was a full-time parent with, 20 years of his life have been dedicated solely to the rearing of me and my brother and I. And now I no longer need him in the same places I did before. My brother no longer needs him in the same ways before, but he still feels this need to force himself into aspects of our lives that he doesn't necessarily fit, because while we love him and we talk with him, we don't need him that way anymore. But he still wants to, infantilize us and force himself into that role. And so I feel like there was this emptiness that he has, and a sense of frustration he has, because he feels no longer needed. And I think that's one of the things that happens when you expect parents to no longer have lives after they become parents. With my mother specifically, as she's the one who works, I think with her, first of all, there's a feeling when you work and you're a parent that you are not as involved in your child's life. There's a lot of guilt give when you're not able to go to every single thing with your kid. And my mom can't, because she works 5 jobs. So she's not always able to do all those things and be with us for every single thing we need, which I think sometimes she feels guilty for, which I don't think she should. But also, she if she did not have my brother and I, or even if she didn't specifically have me and had those 3 extra years for when she had my brother, she would have been further on in her life. She would have finished her school, not have to worry about coming home and taking care of me. She would be further on in her life. Without any kids, she would be able to have one job, because her main job pays her very well. The other jobs were taken to help, help finance my college education. She would no longer have to work herself half to death. She makes that sacrifice willingly for me because she loves me and she feels that's how she should do as a parent. But at the same time, I understand that she is slowly killing herself. She does all these things because she's a parent, but she's a human being, and she doesn't get to be with her friends as often as she would like. She doesn't get to have a real social life because a part of her also doesn't know how to. I mean, she has to worry about going to work and having a job and then coming home and take care of the kids and living with us. She doesn't have room to be a person the way she wants to be. And while now that we're older, we can talk more about these things, it doesn't replace the fact that she doesn't have a lot of time for friendship, for socialization, for sleep, for doing things that she wants to do because she has so many other responsibilities. And we congratulate parents for making those sacrifices. We congratulate them for giving up things in their lives for being better parents, but we don't always give them the empathy that they need and the sympathy that they need in order to support them through this decision, because it is hard. It is hard, and people expect so much from them, but give so little support to parents. Person who says that I don't really want kids. Everyone will tell you, well, you'll change your mind eventually. There is this sense that in order to be fulfilled as a person, you have to have children. That it's the final check in that list of things that you have to do before you can consider yourself a success. It's marriage, house, children, preferably, and a dog. And so a lot of people become parents and feel the need that they had to become parents because of social reasons. Society says that in order to become a fulfilled person, you have to become a parent. And so people become a parent not really knowing what to do, not how to do. I mean, there are hundreds of books about how to raise your children, but when you actually have a child, it's completely different. And parenthood is something that is often sometimes even forced upon you. Like when you're married, there's a lot of pressure to have children. When you, if you get pregnant by accident, there's a lot of pressure to keep the child, even though we live in even though we do have, abortion, things like that. It's not also something it's not something that's often readily available for everybody in every state, in every community. So a lot of people end up having children because they feel like they have no other choice, and adoption isn't always available for certain people. Religious reasons, of course, where people have a lot of children, but there's never either postpartum depression, people never really emphasize about. People always tell you, especially if you're a mother, that even if you're nervous about having a kid, now once you have it and you hold it, everything will change, everything will suddenly be better, and you'll just magically love this kid. And it's just it becomes this mystical, magical, pure thing, and no one forgets that what if you have this child and you don't love it? What if you don't feel that attachment towards it? Are you this horrible person because you don't feel attachment to child anymore? We put so much emphasis on the child's feelings, the child's emotions, the child's needs, because we view them as defenseless. But there's also another human being involved, which are the parents. It's not always a great thing to being people who have accepted the role as parents and do it and love it. Yeah, that's great. And I think I love my parents. I think that they have done a good job teaching me and taking care of me and loving me, and I'm so glad I have them in my life. But I also understand this: not everyone is meant to be a parent. Not everyone who has kids is meant to have kids or should have had kids. And it's not a judgment based on what's in anything. It's just a judgment based on the fact that not everyone wants to have them, but feels a pressure to have them. It's always seen this ultimate gift, and I feel like a lot of people, for most parents, it is a gift. But for some, it's a really heavy burden. And let's also not forget that not all parenthood is seen as a positive thing. If you have too many kids, you're seen as delusional. Even whether you can support them or not, it's never an issue. If you have too many children, you're a weirdo. And also, when you are a young parent, you are viewed as a failure. Let us not pretend that even though when there are teen parents, specifically teen mothers, because teen mothers do get more slack than teen fathers, because you can see that when a young girl is pregnant, there is so much stigma against young people who become parents and answer the call to become parents. But there's so much hate against them, like, you're stupid, you're an idiot, you're naive. There's so much shame given towards them, even though they have accepted that role as parents and are going to do what they're supposed to do. But until they become, the Lorelai Gilmores of the world, it's basically like you are a failure. You are a failure until that point where you become an adult and then you have a successful child. It's like, oh, look what you've managed to do despite all these despite having a child and being a fuck up, you managed to raise a child correctly. That's how we treat teen parents, as failures until they become adults and have somehow pushed through that failure. It's not something like, oh, I know you chose to have this kid. You got pregnant by accident, and you rose to the occasion despite being young, and you're trying your best. But no, it's like, and it's like, there are plenty of teen mothers who sacrifice and do things, but we only emphasize the ones who go out and party and have a great time. And at the same time too, if listen to the whole thing, and this goes for teen parents and adult parents. If you are leaving your child in the hands of a babysitter or a grandparent or someone who's responsible can watch your child so you can go out and have a nice time, what is wrong with that? You're not leaving your child in a rinky-dink environment. You're not leaving them, every night to go party. You are leaving them in the hands of responsible, capable people so that you can go out and be an adult. Or, have fun, or have a good time, because you need to. What good is it for you to be miserable and come home and take care of another person? I'm not saying that, it should be like just totally handed off to another adult and be like, here, you raise my child for me. That's completely different. But you should be able to go out and have a good time. And in terms of, of other things, and I think Larry did a point, like, there's only so much you can do. And I feel like there is only so much that parents can do. And I agree with that point completely, because my parents didn't, like, how many of our parents know every single thing about what we have done in our lives? I mean, I had thoughts of suicide when I was 10, 11 years old. My parents didn't know that. There was plenty of times in my school I faced bullying and difficulties and had, depression and had thoughts of suicide. And, a lot of painful things happened to me when I was younger. That my parents don't know about, because I never communicated that to them. I didn't want them to know about those things. I didn't want them to get involved in that point. And that was when I was young too. So, we underestimate how capable kids are of handling certain things and how they will, double cross and trick their parents. And in terms of censorship, which is kind of the other focus of it, I mean, it's kind of funny because for me, I saw my first rated R movie when I was 8 years old. And since, with my father, and my brother saw it when he was 5, and we saw Gladiator. That was the first rated R movie I ever saw in theaters with my parents, and with specifically my father. And when things happened on the screen that were violent or sexual, because, you've seen Gladiator, I asked my dad what was going on, and he explained it to me. And that was that. I think that the issue is that, with censorship, is that people don't want to discuss these issues with their kids sometimes because they want them to be innocent and have that kind of innocent life and, be in that little bubble. And so they don't want to discuss certain issues with their kids. And so when it comes up in the media and things like that, you don't want it to happen. And, that's why everyone's like, how do you have this in video games? It's not that they don't want to check their kids sometimes. I think that the issue is that they don't want their child exposed to stuff early. Because, the thing about it is, too, like, when they talk about, like, oh, what about parental blocks and blah, blah, blah. By the time I was, like, going on the computer, I knew how to get out of those things. Let's be real. How many people have had, like, parents put up blocks and want to check your internet history, but you knew how to erase that stuff. We knew more about computers than our parents did when we were growing up. How were they supposed to keep us on track with that? And there are plenty who try, but, like, we knew how to get around it. You knew how to go to the sites that had all this stuff in it that really didn't show up or didn't look that bad. You knew how to erase your internet browser. You knew how to do all that stuff. I knew how to get rid of ad blocks. I knew how to, like, go look at my little fan fiction, do all my little stuff. I knew how to do that when I was a kid. I knew how to hide it. They tried to censor me, but I knew stuff. And also the other thing, too, was that I grew up in an area around a lot of violence. And so it was a thing that I clearly understood the difference between reality and fiction. Even though I would, have my little broomstick and pretend I was Kiki's delivery service and, like, hop around my room with my broom, I also knew that if I jumped off the roof with the broomstick, I wasn't going to fly. Because I understood that. Because my parents had always explained to me what was real and what was not. And so I could watch stuff like Gladiator and not, think, oh, I'm going to go impale my little brother now. Neither did he feel the need to do that back to me, because we both understood, because our parents had talked to us about, what those things were, what sex was, what violence was. We knew what those things were because they were around us all the time. And hiding from it and trying to keep us, innocent and pure in this completely wild state wasn't gonna work for a very long time. It just was impractical. And so, even when it comes to video games, if my brother would want a rated M video game, my mother would go to GameStop. She would ask the people, what is the content of this game? What kind of M-rated content was it? Because the thing about my mom is that I think she was more concerned about having too much sexually explicit stuff than necessarily violence, depending on the type of violence. So if it was just, like, mild violence, it'd be okay. But if it was, like, super intense, she would be like, no. And I think that sense of having that open dialogue and being able to talk about, like, what do we think and have that kind of boundaries was what made it easier for us to, grow up in like, all right, you want this M-rated game, I know you're old enough now, you can handle this, and then this, and then this, and then this. Because, but then, of course, not every parent has the time for that. We have to be realistic. In this world, it first of all, it's very easy for kids to get M-rated games these days. It really is. They can get them from friends, older siblings. Parents only have so much control over what their children do. I mean, if you're a harder parent who completely knuckles down, you might have more, but you might only see that, because I had very strict parents as well, but I still knew how to do certain things if I really wanted it. If I wanted to read a book that I knew I wasn't going to be able to, like, I used to go to the library and take out, erotica novels, but no one bothered me because they were just happy I was going to the library and reading books. So, it happens. There's only so much control you have. Children are smart. Children know how to get what they want. Children know how to go around the corner. And even if they can't get it from you, mommy and daddy, they can still get it from other hands. That's why people are so strict about it. It's not necessarily because they don't think that, like, it's not because they don't want to parent, I don't think. It's because there's so many ways to undermine what they do. And there's only so much that they can do without help from other resources. But I guess at the end of the day, my whole thing really isn't even about censorship. It's about the fact that I feel like we don't care about parents in the sense of who they are. We care about the children, and we should care about the children, but we also forget that parents are people, and that we give parents the responsibility to raise these kids, educate them, finance them, take care of them. We expect so much from them, but we give them so little. We say, good on you making those sacrifices, but we never really say, like, oh, sure, you should go out and have a good time. It's like, no, sacrifice. And then it's like, oh, how are you going to go out and have that kind of stuff? It's just like, we don't allow them to be people. And I feel like it's one of the hard things. It's one of the reasons why I feel so uncomfortable about becoming a parent, because a lot of people think that if you say, like, if you don't want to have kids, you'll grow out of it, like I said before. But it's like, no one ever emphasized, like, how cool spinsterhood would be. I have the freedom now, as someone who has no man and has no partner and has no children, to be able to pick up my life and go do whatever I want. If I want to go teach overseas or go travel overseas, I can. I have nothing holding me back because I have no children. If you have children, that's something that you can't do. You are limited. There are things that you can't do in your life. There are things you can't enjoy anymore. But we're like, you have to accept that. And we're like, but it's hard. It's hard. And we emphasize happiness through children. No one says it's good to be a spinster. Everyone's like, one day the bachelor will find that one woman and he'll have that one kid. Children have been said from day one to always fulfill us. And so it should be no surprise that people sometimes blindly have children when they don't need them. Until we shake off this need that you have to have children to be happy, you're not going to have every single parent being able to parent, because they're not doing it just because they want to have a kid. They're doing it to fulfill something in their lives that they feel has to be fulfilled through children.